And we're live. Well, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, extraterrestrials, hobbits, and cryptids, to another episode of Scuttlebutt with the Phill. I am your host, Philip A. Leavenworth, and tonight we'll be discussing Harry Potter on our little podcast, Scuttlebutt with the Phill. So, without further ado, tonight we don't have any guests. There was a little bit of a scheduling conflict with a couple of people, but that's the price you pay when other people you have friends or you're friends with are working 9 to 5s, and you have to accommodate that. Next year, we're going to see how we can rectify that. I would like to have more people come on the show live instead of doing any pre-recorded things. Toward the end of the year, I think most of the shows I had planned for December will probably end up being shows that are pre-recorded. So keep that in mind. Beyond that, at the moment, we'll be discussing kind of in order the films, or the books, the films, and then we'll be going to discuss the upcoming television show that is apparently in the works. And yeah, we might not run the whole hour. Typically, when we have guests, it'll end up running about an hour. But yes, in honor of Fantasy Month, we are covering Harry Potter, and definitely one of my favorite fantasy franchises of the last 20 years, and or 23 years now, I think. I think that as a franchise, I feel like it's enduring. I mean, there's literally an entire land at Universal dedicated to it. So, I mean, I don't think it would be, if you're not a cultural phenomenon, you don't end up having a land at a theme park. So I think that that definitely has a lot to say with it. I don't think I can speak too much to any video games that have come out. I know there's a video game that came out not too long ago that I heard about and I would have loved to have played, but I did not. And so I will not be addressing anything in regard to that right now. So, yeah, we'll start off with the books. So, I believe, kind of like Lord of the Rings last week, I discovered Harry Potter as books before they became movies, and so I think at the time it was just four books were available to us: The Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, and then The Goblet of Fire. Those ones were the first that we were reading, um, as these movies are being released, and so we watched Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Loved it because the kids were about our age, and so we could relate to them. And then I think like what, a year or two later, Chamber of Secrets comes out, and we're just kind of just elated of it. And then somewhere around that, I think a book, I think the fifth book comes out, and yeah, we go and dive through that, and then the next movie comes out, another book, and another movie, another book, and then by the time it's all said and done, I think the books keep getting longer and longer, and we keep on sort of being completely dumbstruck by that, having to consult a fact like that. And for me, having to read through all that and having these pages in between, they were always kind of these like illustrative pages in between. For whatever reason, I don't know. It was like every chapter would cover something, and then like there was like an image or something that would reveal something from that be representative of something in the book, and or in that chapter. And I felt like something about it felt like bedtimey. I don't know. Something about it was alluring, and I think that's kind of the why my brother and I kind of just fell in love with it, and we stuck with it. Um, yeah, Harry Potter is kind of a timeless story, and it kind of goes along this same sort of theme that we'll be discussing in a little while, and kind of connecting it to the current state of things right now. But without getting too specific, but um, for my anti-derivative Jill viewers, if you're in the house, um, yeah, I know you guys are being that you guys have kind of already gone through the entire Harry Potter film series, and so you guys are kind of maybe burned out on it. But yeah, if you have anything, any comments or questions, comments, or concerns, you can definitely let me know. I appreciate anything that you guys can give me. It's always something great to discuss and have a back and forth and sort of a dialogue. And yeah, I really hope we can get that done. But yeah, beyond that, we have the Harry Potter books. Once they were all released, there was this impression that like how would they adapt the later books on the big screen? And as we got closer and closer to, I think, 2010, 2011, it became readily apparent that Harry Potter was going to try to split the seventh book into two films because, I mean, it's a really long book and it's got enough material to do that. And then there were other franchises that were trying to kind of ape off of that, mostly as a cash grab, but, I guess it makes sense. Kind of have your grand finale be this big two-part film. I mean, you probably draw a straight line between uh, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hollows, and the Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, the original plan for Divergent, which was to make a two-part movie that only ended up having one part of it, if I'm not mistaken, and then so it's an incomplete arc. And then Hunger Games did the same thing, and numerous other film series have done the same. I think it's good practice. I mean, even if it is sort of a cash grabby sort of move. I mean, The Hobbit had done something like that as well. So there's that. But um, yeah, I would love to hear anybody's comments or questions about the Harry Potter books. What was your favorite book? And which one's the one that you was probably your first experience reading, if you had to read them out of order? But beyond that, too, um, I mean, the writing of the books is definitely, I think, pretty good. I'm kind of surprised that she was able to write it all on basically like restaurant napkins and then to like stitch it all together later on. I mean, I can only imagine how big the collection of napkins that could have been, especially for the later books. But I think by then she'd kind of gotten out of that system of poverty and she was now able to kind of afford ways to write things that were easier to condense. And I mean, Harry Potter is a immense property, an immense intellectual property that is a powerhouse. It's a juggernaut. I mean, having grown up with it myself, and my fiance loves it. My younger brother loves it. I mean, it's a cultural phenomenon. I mean, we went to Universal Studios and we were talking about it for years. And then one of the last times we went right before our Universal annual pass expired, we went and bought because she's a Ravenclaw, or I'm a Ravenclaw. She's a Hufflepuff. So we're different types of people. But I think it ultimately works out. I bought my Ravenclaw robe. She bought her Hufflepuff robe, and for this past Halloween, I guess the year before we went as Harry Potter characters. So no one specifically, just people. I mean, when I was a Ravenclaw, she went as a Hufflepuff, so there was that. But I want to get kind of wide with this in a minute, but I think we'll go ahead and dive right into the movies. Since I think more people, at least my impression, is that they've read the Harry Potter. They've read the Harry Potter books, but only in passing, and some people haven't even read the books at all, and some people have mostly just stuck to the movies, and so that's their attachment to it, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to fault anybody for it, but there are some interesting themes strung throughout the entire um, book, film, and you know the entire thing, and probably even so with the upcoming television series that's coming up. So that's also important to keep in mind. But yeah, when it came out, my brother was actually the one that got me into it. We kind of knew about Lord of the Rings from my parents, mostly my mom, not so much at all, but dad, grandma. Grandma was more of the reader, at least that's what I believe. And so grandma kind of influenced them, and then somehow or another, my Aunt Roberta, I think, was the one that inspired grandma, and then grandma, got us all into it. So it's kind of a weird feedback loop that got us all into the books and the movies of Harry Potter. But I think for most people, yeah, the Harry Potter movies are probably their entry point. But um, yeah, 'cause I think with the movies, we were kind of growing up with the kids. I mean, it was a situation sort of like the Toy Story films where we watched the first Toy Story, second one, and then by the time we got to the third one, Andy was graduating from high school, I believe, and moving on with his life and moving on from toys. And so both this franchise and Toy Story uh, kind of got me this impression that I was getting old with these characters and kind of learning along with them the different things to expect. And I don't know, it was kind of wild, but ultimately, I think it was pretty worthwhile, and that's why it's kind of surprising that certain things have come out about the author of the books. But I think it's important to separate the art from the artist most of the time because I feel like artists tend to create things that tend to kind of take on a life of their own, and so it becomes something. It stops becoming a work of that artist, and it starts becoming a work of the culture. And it's the culture that ultimately decides what value that work is. And it took me a long time to realize that, but I think if you can create a work of art that ultimately resonates with a group of people like that, and you're making a difference by creating themes, even if you weren't aware of the themes you're creating at the time, and this stuff kind of just manifests on its own, then you've created art that's impactful, and you've created art that is something that has the power, the capacity to change the world in some way or another, even if it is only changing a single person's mind on something. I mean, even that's powerful, I think. But I think beyond just that, the film series kind of went through a series of like passings. Because I mean, Dumbledore from I believe the first two films is not the same Dumbledore as it is for the rest of the series, and yeah, I mean, I like both portrayals of Dumbledore, um, but I think the first one by Richard Harris is there's something about him that's a little I don't know what you call it, but it's very kind of earnest and very wizardy. I don't know, but somehow or another it works, and that I do appreciate. And then when Michael Gambon did his role as Dumbledore, I feel like his is a lot more energy in it, and I appreciate that also. So I don't really dislike either portrayal. Um, I feel like we obviously get more of the ladders, but um, no, I feel like when we do, it's pretty resonant. Um, One thing I may not address here is the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movies and books, but I might. We'll see how much time we have. But yeah, I think the entire trio: Harry himself, Daniel Radcliffe, Hermione, Emma Watson, and then even you know Ron, Rupert Grint. All of those characters, there's a vibe to all of them. They make the story. I mean, Maggie Smith just passed away. Professor McGonagall. Professor Snape, who I believe is sort of the unsung hero of the entire franchise, and I think most people do agree with that. Um, the anti-hero of the whole franchise, sort of the Heathcliff of the Harry Potter franchise, borrowing a thing from Wuthering Heights, which was played by our old pal Alan Rickman, who is now passed on, unfortunately. I mean, there's been I don't know, since that happened, there's been just so many people have passed on from it. I mean, I think that's the biggest kind of heartbreak for me from this franchise that so many people have passed on from it. Growing up with these films, it's like almost losing family essentially. And yeah, I mean, that's the biggest part for me that I take forward. And so that's why it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of these actors that they have coming for this live action television series kind of try to come in and kind of try to occupy that space that these other actors that did the films and have now become iconic because of those films. I mean, it's a tough act to follow, and I can only hope that when the time comes, we can kind of accept them without going a little too crazy with it. I'm willing to let them stand on their own. This is a new interpretation. It's been 20 years. I'm more than willing to let them have their fun and do their own interpretation. So I just hope that the audience is willing to do that. I'm just kind of over, the discussions of woke stuff in culture. I'm done with identity politics stuff. I am just going to take on the face value that whoever's taking a role is taking the role because the role is the role, or the role is there because somebody earned it. I'm not going to, I mean, I think ultimately that it's a meritocracy in general, because I don't think people just get handed a role. And then when people are handed a role, people react with a fierceness, regardless or not if it's some kind of a woke thing or not. It's just people are against the idea of tokenism. People are against this idea that people get handed things. And so, I mean, generally speaking, I think most of the stuff today, most of the stuff on TV, I mean, people are well casted, even if it is pretty good at representing another culture. I think people are more or less um, dedicated to the idea that people should earn their way, and I'm definitely on board with that. But there's tons of television shows that are coming out today that are celebrations of representation and all that don't have to rely too much on the woke stuff. So um, I'm not even sure that's an argument. But we'll get off that soapbox for the moment. I'm sure we'll be bringing that up again later. But yeah, again, I'm looking forward to the possibility of them doing a television show. And, I have all the faith in the world that they'll do it right. And I kind of hope they just take advantage of the set pieces that are in Florida and over at Universal City, because, I mean, they're pretty thorough. They're pretty good. I remember my dad, when we went to Universal Studios with him, was just taking pictures everywhere because, I mean, the queue on Harry Potter and the Forbidden Forest is like really good, really well done. It's like being at Hogwarts, and I think even my dad, he was tripping out on it. But yeah, I wish I could go back. I think I had a lot of fun going to that Hogsmeade Universal. I have not been to Florida. I don't live in Florida, but I do plan to visit at some point because there's a lot of stuff in Florida I do like. I'd probably be sticking around in and around Orlando, but I don't know. You never know. But yeah, so we'll be moving on from, because I think we kind of covered all of the books and the movies and even the TV show just in kind of like broad strokes. But now I'm going to kind of get more into detail on things. And then if we're done, or if we finish a little bit early, I'll probably dive a little bit into the Fantastic Beast stuff, but not too much. But yeah, so in terms of like, broader questions like who's my favorite character or something like that, I mean, I feel like I kind of always identify with Harry himself, strictly because I think I was kind of like that kid that, you know, black hair, brown eye, kind of just doing things and all that. Although I've been accused of that hazel eyes at one point, which I thought was interesting. But I kind of felt like I could relate to him because I felt like I was him at a point, kind of a like a nerdy kid with glasses that you know had to kind of find his way in this new group. Although when I first took the Pottermore test, it came out that I was part of Gryffindor, which I kind of felt weird about. And then when I took the test again, or a later test, it came back that I was Ravenclaw, and I felt like that was probably more accurate. So ever since then, I've gone with the Ravenclaw sorting. So um, yeah, maybe it's not good, you know, Harry Potter policy, but I still did it, and I think you should too. But yeah, beyond that, I would love to hear someone else's favorite character and you know explore what the way they feel about it. But yeah, one of the other things I do want to discuss is this idea that the Harry Potter franchise is actually a discussion about authoritarianism. Because essentially, Voldemort represents a siege, a seizure of power by dark forces that basically in the very end, Voldemort is slowly but surely, insidiously working his way little by little through the ranks of the Ministry of Magic, through the ranks of Hogwarts, through every little bit of the Wizarding world. And at one point, they do beat him back, and they think they've won. And then he comes back even more powerfully than before. And he comes back and basically takes over everything. And essentially, they're on the way out. They're not going to beat this. There's a point where they're all defeated, and they know they can't beat this thing, and that Voldemort is going to basically destroy the Wizarding world as we know it. And then, just then, there's a final assault, a final battle at Hogwarts, and there's a battle between Harry Potter and Voldemort, and Harry Potter wins. And Harry Potter wins because he ultimately is the one that shows more heart. And this is obviously after he gets killed and then resuscitated. But ultimately, in the end, he does win. And I feel like that kind of message, oddly enough, I mean, the episode topic for today was kind of planned a long time in advance. So, it's just kind of coincidence that we can kind of carry that theme forward and kind of apply it to what's going on in real life right now, which I think is kind of fascinating. But no, that gives me hope that there is a way out of this. But anyway, beyond that, you have themes about family, found family. You have themes about mentors and students, pupils. You have all these things that I feel resonate with a lot of people, and that's probably why this franchise is just so, I believe, revered in many ways. And I think for a lot of us that grew up with it, we've taken these values that the series has taught, and we've tried to apply them in our own lives. I mean, I believe most of the women that have been cast in roles in Harry Potter have been activists in one way or another, in some place, with some social issue or environmental issue, and I think that's great. And I think there's nothing wrong with believing in something and fighting for it and doing their best to ensure that everyone around them is taken care of and safe. And I think that's one of the major reasons why the arc of the entire Harry Potter franchise resonates with me and others, is because there's something about the agency that is offered to us in a world like that, and there's something about not just doing away with sort of an old paradigm that's not working, but also giving way to newer paradigms that are fairer and more just. I mean, literally, I think the franchise ends with, um, you know, freeing the house elves and then sort of unleashing the goblins and all this. And so an undercurrent of thematic elements that keep going back to this idea of young revolutionaries, essentially, and young people who take matters in their own hands and young people changing the world. And I feel like that is one of the strongest messages that Harry Potter can convey. And through it, it also filtered down into all these other YA copycats that did their best to do the same. And I think that there's some kind of something powerful in that, and I don't know, something about it, I love it, and that's why I really hope we see more of that in the years to come, given what's going on right now. There's a kind of a fascistic quote that people often go to. It's like, hard times create strong men, and so on and so forth. And I think oftentimes you can apply that to art, um, reapply it to art. You can say, hard times create great artists. And I think hard times can generate fantastic art that says something about society or even reflects it out or even offers some kind of a respite from everything going on. And oddly enough, this respite gives us an empowering feeling that we can actually affect change in some meaningful way. And for that reason, Harry Potter is special and will always be special to me. But yeah, so in case you don't know, as I mentioned earlier, my house is Ravenclaw. Ravenclaw is characterized by basically intellect, intellectual curiosity, and basically being a big brainiac. And that's kind of what I've always been. Always try to be, never try to go away from. And I think this kind of a discussion about why Ravenclaw might not be the best, since they may or may not have done something that benefited Voldemort, but that may be also an interesting theme we'll have to pick up on at some point. But anyway, um, I would love to hear about whatever house you may have gotten into, or if you're in any house at all. And if you're not, why aren't you? But generally speaking, I think I try to live the values of the house that I'm doing, strictly because I think there's nothing wrong with the values that it stands for, and I might go over that in a minute. But I do think that we can also compare specific elements between the movies and the books. It's kind of surprising what's left out and what's kept in, and I would love to talk about that at some point with someone else. Maybe we can again, maybe next year. Again, this is Fantasy Month on the channel, and there's a lot of different ways we can go about things. And I think we're not getting as many views in the months of the horror or fantasy months that I've selected, but um, just generating content that I can kind of splice and then move into different stuff, maybe put it in shorts or whatever, also can be a valuable lesson to learn from all of this once we got it. So we'll definitely be keeping that one in mind too. But I think one of the things that fascinates me the most about Harry Potter is the use of magic, because I think every fantasy or work of fantasy tends to develop some sort of a magic system that may or may not have any practical applications, at least in the sense of the world itself. But there's always like a different level of severity in terms of the usefulness of magic in a certain world. And the thing I do appreciate about Harry Potter, unlike Lord of the Rings, where everything's kind of very implicitly fantastical and magic is sort of like the Force in Lord of the Rings. Um, Magic, I don't believe exists in. I'm trying to think of other franchises, but off the top of my head, I can't think of them. But um, magic kind of exists in the world of Harry Potter by separating the worlds of magic and on magic, or what do they call it? No magic, no match. Anyway, so they kind of separate it out by saying that the world of the Muggles is kind of like magicless, but it's not true because you can use magic outside, but it's technically illegal in the wizarding world. But in the wizarding world, magic is very, very, very implicit. But I do want to address something real quick because we're going into so the following Harry Potter episode on Scuttlebutt with the Phill is brought to you by Vega Aerospace. Vega Aerospace in space. No one can hear you. So ultimately, the magic that's used in Harry Potter manifests itself from the use of the wands. And the wands, essentially, in the Harry Potter franchise, are essentially the lightsaber of Harry Potter, at least in my opinion. Uh, Not only are they a weapon, but they're also kind of a status symbol, if you will. Different types of wands mean different things. Different types of wands are made out of different things. Same things with lightsabers. Lightsabers are made out of different things. Uh, they also symbolize different things. They're also status symbols. At least I would assume. I mean, I assumed at one point. Um, Beyond that, there's a lot of discussion about what Horcruxes means, curses, and then other issues with wand lore, as some people have called it, and concepts like the Elder Wand and things like that. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of elements of Harry Potter that are kind of playing part and parcel with a lot of fantastical elements that predate it, but it's able to weave in all of these concepts without um, really having to dive into the mechanics of it all. I think that's one of the things fantasy can do well if the world is well rendered, like it is in Harry Potter, where the reason behind something is not as important as like how it functions within the world itself. And I think I really want to do a deep dive on the lore of Harry Potter at some point. I even want to do one about Lord of the Rings, but I feel like Jess of the Shire does a better job than I ever could. But I don't know. Maybe I could do a collaboration at some point with her. But we kind of explored earlier major themes, and one of the biggest themes I think of Harry Potter is kind of like Star Wars in the sense that there's definitely this discussion about good and evil, and is it our choices that show how truly you know good or bad we are. And I feel like there definitely is a nature versus nurture argument here, because I mean, if Harry Potter had ended up in maybe a better environment, maybe he would have gone a different way, or it wouldn't have made him into a person that he is. And I feel like that's kind of important. I mean, the series is also about death and acceptance. How the characters handle loss. I mean, toward the end, I mean, at a point, I think the audience is kind of just like burned out with all the people that we grew to care about, and having them basically be offed was, just devastating. And I mean, I'm still broken up about Lupin's death. I mean, that got me for some reason. But yeah, I mean, I recommend uh, kind of tallying all the people who've all the characters who've died, not just on top of the actors, but yeah. I mean, the themes that I was also kind of discussing earlier about found family and family, I feel like kind of resonate these days, where you know discussions about politics and all this stuff kind of drives people away from their own families. And I feel like I think ultimately politics shouldn't be the thing that drives family apart. And I feel like families who don't accept their children for being like different or anything, those people are the people who need to change. It's not the people who are different that need to change. So ultimately, those people have to take stock of who they are and like recognize that those toxic habits aren't very conducive to a happy family life. But I mean, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Harry Potter, and I do have some little kind of points to kind of cover. But yeah, if I had more fan theories to discuss, I definitely would. I mean, I'd even love to discuss what ifs that we could have befallen the world of Harry Potter. I think I kind of wonder what would have happened if Snape would have survived, or if Draco had even switched sides. I think that would have been like switch sides and fought with them. I mean, that would have been quite the thing. I mean, I do think that the actual hero of the franchise could be Neville, but I don't think that's going to be that much of a controversial opinion. I think most people agree with that. But I think there's kind of a popular fan theory that Dumbledore is a time traveling Ron. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I have to watch the Fantastic Beasts thing. I mean, time travel is a thing in the Harry Potter franchise, but it manifests in a way that's kind of narratively consistent because you go back in time and you're kind of prone to making decisions that whatever you had already made, and so it is a stable time loop you enter once you do that. And I think that's actually pretty good for the most part. And then, yeah, I mean, there's what if scenarios we could explore that are kind of fun. You know, like what if Harry had been raised by Sirius instead of the Dursleys, and then what if Voldemort never tried to kill Harry Potter at all, and Harry Potter was able to grow up with his parents. I mean, there's endless possibilities, and I would love to do a deep dive on all of it at some point. Um, I'm definitely not going to leave Harry Potter alone, but I mean, we could even dive into the world lore at some point. The history of Hogwarts seems fascinating. Even the kind of mechanics that involve the magical government are kind of fascinating to me. And then the kind of um, sort of research that would go into analyzing all these fantastic beasts that are covered in the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movies, as well as some of the book elements. Yeah, one of these days I want to dive into J.K. Rowling's inspirations for the characters and the settings of plot points, because I mean, I feel like somebody with an imagination like this, had to have had quite the eventful life in order for it to go down like it did. So I mean, there's that, and then there's definitely a discussion we could have about the world of the books and how it really affected and impacted real life. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff. I mean, prejudice because you have the Muggles, and then people who are magic sensitive, and then you have the power dynamics that are involved in the world of magic, and then the abuse of authority that happens with Voldemort. So there's that. But no, I mean, I wish I could someone else on to discuss this with, but at some point we will. And I'll definitely have this episode to go back to for material. But besides that, um, I think Harry Potter has had a profound effect on the culture. I mean, the legacy and the impact is quite astounding. I mean, Harry Potter, I think, was the gateway for a lot of people into the fantasy genre. And beyond that, it was even a gateway into the YA genre. So, I mean, there are fan communities, fandoms of it that I haven't joined myself, but I'd be interested in kind of checking out at some point. And then there's tons of merchandise. I mean, we got a couple of items from our time at Universal, as I mentioned with the robes and such. And then, you know, just so much to discuss. I wish I could have time, but we will definitely be finding time soon. I think we'll be ending at about 45 tonight, but I just want to touch briefly on Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. I've only seen, I think, the first film, and I think there's three, maybe four. I don't know. I think it's three, and I do want to see the other two. My fiance has seen all of them, and I think she likes them. I don't think she likes them more than the main series, but I think I'll have to explore them more because I mean there was some elements that I'd heard about with Grindelwald and his sort of main goal mirroring a little bit of Voldemort and the discussion of like the real world versus the fantastic world. I do know that when I was watching the first movie, I was fascinated by the idea of an American school of witchcraft and wizardry, and what I had seen from some of the world building. I mean, aside from the names of the houses at the American school, I feel like they could have did something more with it. Because I mean, I don't even think there's color robes. I think it's kind of like a basic thing there. I feel like That may or may not be a failure on J.K. Rowling's part of creativity, which I think is kind of fascinating. But yeah, I really hope that we can see more of that moving forward, especially in the present day. Because I mean, Harry Potter's world and the witchcraft school of witchcraft and wizardry in England is, or in the UK is, like the main thing we all kind of love and appreciate, and so that's kind of the little trade-off, I think, when you think about it. But generally speaking, I don't think. I mean, I know that J.K. Rowling made the kind of bizarre and like shoehorned in explanation that Voldemort, or not Voldemort, Dumbledore was was gay, and again, no problem with gay characters at all. But when you have been reading this stuff for like 10 years or so, and then there's like no mention of it, and it's kind of like shoehorned in, it's kind of like, really? Why wasn't this mentioned earlier? I mean, you could have made this a big thing earlier, and then the controversy itself may have sold books, but like it didn't really factor into anything, and that can come across to many people, including myself, as kind of like the worst impulses in tokenism, and I think that's something to consider. But again, like I've only seen the first one, so I can't really say much. But if anybody has any recommendations on how to approach the Fantastic Beasts series of movies, definitely let me know, because I'm kind of curious. Because I'm fascinated by this idea of an American wizarding school, and I just wish it had as much um, depth as we see in the Hogwarts school in the UK. Because I mean, generally speaking, I'm fascinated by the idea of how the wizarding world would have handled World War II and all that. So it doesn't look like we'll be seeing that anytime soon. But I'm really kind of curious. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit to discuss. Just going over some of my notes, but unfortunately, I won't have too much time here, and I would really love to have a guest on to kind of bounce off of with it. But at any rate, um, yeah, no, I'm just happy to discuss this franchise and explore a lot of the themes and elements of it. And yeah, next week we'll be diving into Arthurian legends, and I might have my friend Benjamin Franson on for that. And then the week after that, I'm going to have another guest on to discuss Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then Fantasy Month will conclude, and there might be another special episode that's pre-recorded that airs on Friday, November 11th, or Friday, November, I believe it's the 29th, actually. I apologize. November 29th. And then the week after that, we'll be diving into our season finale for the year, which will be sort of a state of the channel. Where do we go from here? And yeah, where the channel is going in 2025. And I do have some plans, so don't be surprised. And then the week after that, I'll be doing a premiere episode of my first vlog. So that'll be the Phill vlog, where I'll be going over my experiences in an MFA, my first semester in an MFA program. And I'll actually have some members of the cohort that I'm participating in join me to discuss it. And my friend Benjamin Franzen might actually be a part of that. So, yeah, no, I think it's all exciting. And I can't wait to go through all these episodes and build the audience and see where we go in 2025 and beyond. So, yeah, without further ado, I'll go ahead and sign off and wish you all a great weekend, and hope you guys find the time to have fun. Don't let things that are out of your control get the better of you, as always. And yeah, don't forget your towel. Don't panic. And most of all, I'll be signing off with so long and thanks for all the fish.